Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I am Ghadi and this is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates, stories and news from the region that I call my home, West Asia. Still reeling from the deadly quake, millions in Turkey and Syria were forced to relive their traumas last Monday as a third quake sent tremors through the disaster-hit zones. Now for the last days, scientists have been warning from such occurrences. They're saying it's gonna take a few more weeks to die down. As the countries crawl back to recovery, what's taking place there? We tell you more. Fear and panic have become the new normal for Syria and Turkey as the third mega quake forced people to relive afresh the trauma of the disaster. Demolition teams were still clearing mounds of rubble from the devastating February 6 earthquakes, and emergency responders scrambling to shelter survivors who were once again traumatized by Monday's magnitude 6.4 earthquake.
Aliye!
Tamam, ne istersen alacağım. Gece yatamıyorum.
I cannot sleep at night. Is the same thing going to happen? Are we going to experience another earthquake? We are very scared. I haven't slept for a week.
Hava is not alone. There are thousands like her, living in villages in corners of the disaster-hit countries.
We witnessed past events and the war, but nothing is as frightening as now. We are very scared. With war, my family moved from one place to another safer one offered by the government. With the earthquakes, it is just scary because you can't take your precautions. You just feel yourself shaking.
Even before the third quake hit, scientists across the world had warned of a similar situation, an aftershock that might possibly worsen the misery of the victims.
This is part of the sequence of kind of stress response. After a large earthquake occurs, it changes the forces acting on the rocks and the faults surrounding that main shock. In the case of a very large main event like our 7.8 earthquake in this case, it produces a very large area where faults that were nearing preparedness for an earthquake are pushed beyond that breaking point. And so in the weeks and months following a large earthquake, we can expect these events to occur again, hopefully in a gradually decaying manner so that they become less and less severe with time.
In the last week, help piled up from across the world to help the two countries in need. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Ankara and promised a $100 million more in aid to Turkey. Then came NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg, who pledged that the defense alliance will be sending thousands of tents to the quake-hit country. While for Syria, help has flown in from regional partners. On Monday, President Bashar al-Assad went to Oman, his first foreign trip since the deadly earthquake, and a sign of breaking out of isolation after nearly 12 years of civil war. West Asia Bureau, WION. World is one. We have a lot more lined up for you in this edition of the West Asia Post. But first, let's take a quick look at what's making the headlines across the region.
Turkey releases new guidelines for disaster-hit areas. Fresh guidelines allow companies and charities to help in the urgent task of rebuilding homes. United Nations says it will scale up deliveries to Syria's rebel-held regions, further adding that the region needs more to battle crises. Far-right Israeli minister formally gains responsibilities over Jewish settlements in the West Bank, vows to bring their legal status close to those living in Israel. Lebanese judge filed new case against central bank chief Riyad Salameh, who is already under probe for fortune amassed during the financial crisis. Traffic more than doubled last year at the Dubai airport, one of the world's busiest for international flights, but numbers still remain below pre-pandemic levels.
Impacted by the deadly quake, Turkey's collapsing buildings might also shake Erdogan's chances of a re-election. Now the Turkish government has decided to stick to the timeline of the elections. But will this prove counterproductive for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan? Let's take a look.
The devastating earthquake can potentially cause political tremors for the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. People's anger in the quake-hit country has shifted from the natural calamity to the government's slow response.
Can't live here. Our glorious hometown is over now. For God's sake, anyone who has a conscience, take a look at this. It's been in this state since Monday. She died on Tuesday. Enough. What would happen if it was your mother? Dear Recep Tayyip Erdogan, what happened to a world leader? Where are you? Where?
İstemiyoruz, biz yardım kuruluşu istemiyoruz.
More than 40,000 people were killed in the earthquake that had struck 2 weeks ago, a toll that keeps rising, even as recovery efforts continue. Erdogan's Justice and Development Party came to power when Turkey was still reeling from the 1999 earthquake. Back in the early 2000s, the government promised that Turkey will be ready for the next quake. For years, infrastructure and development were on its list of deliverables. But what happened on the 6th of February is exactly what was not promised. The disaster exposed Ankara's lack of disaster response capabilities. Erdogan himself accepted the shortcoming in his government's response, but underlined that anyone else would have dealt with it in the same way.
Maalesef son tespitlere göre
Despite the fact that we have gathered perhaps one of the largest search and rescue teams to the region with more than 141,000 members, unfortunately, it is a fact that we have not been able to respond as fast as we hoped.
75.523'e
Hoş geldiniz, şeref verdiniz diyoruz.
On the one hand, dealing with the disaster, Turkey's ruling AP party is planning to stick to their proposed election timetable. Bloomberg reports that in a recent meeting, Erdogan and senior party members came to the conclusion that the polls will be held on the 14th of May, although the original date of the 18th of June still remains on the table.
Teşekkürler Sancaktepe.
The tragedy upended electoral campaigning underway for months. There are 8 million eligible voters residing in Turkey's disaster zones. This makes up for 14% of the electorate, and it is still not clear how ballots would be cast in these areas, or how elections can be held in a fair and square manner. On top of that, as per government figures, 2 million out of those 8 have already left the area. Erdogan has publicly refrained from making a commitment to his previously declared preferred election timetable since the earthquakes.
25 Ocak'ta başlayacak.
Even the government has not made any official comment. While postponing the elections can give the government more time to prioritize relief and address the rehabilitation on hand, analysts believe that Erdogan will push the rebuilding effort and commitment to the election timetable as a show of strength.
But the ship can sail both ways, as the incumbent Prime Minister will also have to experience voter frustration over the deteriorating economy, with large parts of the population facing a cost of living crisis, exasperated by the quake. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
A recent report indicated that Iran is actually closer to the enrichment level, to the uranium enrichment level that is close to a nuclear bomb making. Now, Tehran refutes these allegations, and as the IAEA is probing through this report has raised the question once again: will Iran acquire a nuclear bomb? Let's take a look.
Is Iran moving towards making a nuclear bomb? This is the question that has come up after a recent report on Iran's uranium enrichment. Earlier this week, Bloomberg reported that Iran has enriched uranium to a level just below what is needed for making a nuke. It quoted 2 senior diplomats as its source, underscoring the risk that the country's unrestrained atomic activities could prompt a new crisis. Talking about this report, the global nuclear watchdog said it is aware of the reports relating to Iran's uranium enrichment levels, adding that the IAEA is discussing the results of recent agency verification activities with Iran. It hasn't yet issued a report on the findings to member states, something the watchdog usually does when Iran makes advances in its nuclear activities. In a statement, Chief Rafael Grossi said they will inform member states as appropriate. According to media reports, the IAEA is trying to clarify how Iran accumulated uranium enriched to 84% purity. This is the highest level found by inspectors in Iran till date. Tehran refuted these claims and repeated past statements that its centrifuges were configured to enrich uranium to a 60% level of purity. To make an atomic weapon, what you need is uranium enriched to 90%, and what Iran has is just 6% below that mark. Inspectors from the nuclear watchdog will now need to determine whether Iran intentionally produced this material or was it an accumulation within the pipes connecting the centrifuges. The enrichment revelation was just a few days after it was reported that Iran altered the piping joining 2 groups of centrifuges in its Fordo plant. Such alteration to the piping can allow faster enrichment to higher levels. Tehran earlier this month disputed comments over Iranian enrichment operations at Fordo as well, and on Wednesday said that agency officials are in the country for negotiations.
We maintain our relationship with the IAEA within the bounds of safeguards. Regarding the matters that the agency inspector had mentioned, agency officials have been in Tehran since yesterday. They are negotiating, visiting and inspecting, and the ambiguities caused by an incorrect takeaway by one inspector have been resolved or are being resolved.
The latest visit by IAEA inspectors comes as Iran and the West hit a dead end in talks centered around reviving the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Under the 2015 agreement, Iran was only supposed to enrich uranium up to 3.67% for 15 years. Tehran has also been flaked by the West in the last few months. Tehran has also been criticized by the West in the last few months for its deadly crackdown on anti-government protesters. The latest revelation underlines concerns raised by the West and Israel over the years. They have been trying to mobilize the international community to prevent the scenario of a nuclear-armed Iran. Israel believes this will pose a direct threat to the country's existence, destabilize the already volatile region, and present a security risk to the United States and its allies. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
And now to Palestine. Fresh tensions have flared up in Palestine after Israelis launched an arrest operation in the city of Nablus. Now the tensions have been the deadliest in the region since the Intifada. Our next report tells you more.
It was an Israeli raid in the city of Nablus that has sparked high tensions between Israel and Palestine to levels unseen in the recent past. On Wednesday, Israel launched a daytime arrest operation in the West Bank city. But it soon turned deadly. At least 11 Palestinians were killed and many were injured. The fatalities include a man over 70 years of age and a child. The 4-hour raid reduced a building to rubble and left a series of shops riddled with bullets. Many parked cars were crushed. The Israeli military justified the raid and said it was targeting 3 suspects planning attacks in the immediate future. There were no Israeli casualties.
Yesterday, in a joint operation by the IDF, Shin Bet and the Special Police Unit, 3 terrorists were eliminated in the Kasbah in Nablus, in addition to other terrorists who fired at our forces.
The Nablus raid was the deadliest Israeli operation the region has seen in decades. The last time such tensions emerged was during the Second Intifada, also called the Palestinian Uprising of the 2000s. The operation has ignited a fresh flare of tensions between the two longtime foes. Hours after the raid, several rockets were fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. Israel's military said 6 rockets were fired towards Ashkelon and Sderot. 5 of them were intercepted by its air defense system, while 1 fell in an isolated area. Palestinian witnesses, however, claim there were 8 rockets, not 6 as claimed by Israel. Israel, in retaliation, bombed the Gaza Strip. The attack sent plumes of black smoke rising over one of the targeted locations north of Gaza City. On Thursday, Palestinian factions across the occupied West Bank called for a general strike and a day of mourning, while the authorities in Israel remained on high alert for a possible retaliation by Palestinian groups.
It is a day of the mourning period and a strike. How would we be able to work or eat or drink if our brothers in Nablus are being killed? We should stand in solidarity with them and with the people of Nablus. There should be a general strike. Thank God the strike is in all of the West Bank and Gaza.
We're nearly 3 months into 2023, and this year has turned out to be the worst in recent times for Israel-Palestine tensions. The Palestinian Health Ministry says Israel has killed at least 60 people since the start of 2023. The figure includes those Israel deemed as terrorists as well as civilians. Since last June, Israel has been stepping up its military raids across the West Bank. There have been several confrontations between Israeli soldiers and Palestinians. During these operations, many clashes have turned deadly for common bystanders, apart from the soldiers and those targeted. The surge in violence coincides with the election of Israel's ultra-right government, headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The coalition, since coming to power, has been pushing for expansion of settlements in Palestinian areas, as well as a de facto annexation of the West Bank. Global players, including the US and the United Nations, have raised an alarm over the recent escalation in violence. During his last visit to the region, CIA Chief William Burns even said that the tensions resemble the Second Intifada. Raising concerns now, is the Intifada to befall Israel and Palestine again? This is a question not just West Asia, but the entire world dreads. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Ending on a report from the Arabian Gulf. Now, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has unveiled a new project to give its capital's downtown a fresh new look. Let's take a look. That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you always the most recent updates from the most volatile region in the world. Until then, stay safe. I'm Ghadi Francis signing off from the heart of Beirut, Lebanon, and you're watching WION World is One.